Good morning. Welcome to a really special presentation here at WiLS. We are joined by two of our friends from, would you say sister organization, Scott and Mary? I mean, they're
That's
coming to
that's
us.
probably a fair descriptor.
Yeah, they're coming to us from MCLS, which is the Midwest Collaborative for Library Services Service.
Correct.
They are based in Michigan and provide a lot of the same kind of services to Michigan and I think Indiana libraries that WiLS does in Wisconsin. And we are thrilled to be joined by them today because they are going to be showing us Talk, which is an early literacy program. I won't get into it because Scott's going to talk all about it, but we're really excited to be partnering with them to bring this resource to Wisconsin libraries. It's a tremendous product, and I think you're actually going to be excited at what a good value it is for your libraries too. So I promised Scott and Mary I would be brief, and I shall. With that said, Scott, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can sort of take the reins and show us Talk.
Okay. Let me share mine here and just to verify everybody can see it.
Looks good.
Okay. So thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. I am Scott Garrison. I'm the Executive Director for the Midwest Collaborative for Library Services, and I'm here today with my colleague, Mary Ruthko, who is our Marketing and Communication Coordinator. And I just really want to start by saying one of the reasons I'm so excited to be here today is to be able to share with you about Talk. And really, this is the first conversation like this that we've had in which we are partnering with another consortium to bring Talk to more libraries. One of the things we pride ourselves on at MCLS is our ability to help a library or a group of libraries take an idea from maybe one library to more libraries to many libraries, and that's very much what we're doing with Talk. So we are a nonprofit consortium like WiLS is, and for the first time, we're also venturing into the kind of vendor territory, and we're working directly with WiLS as our sole agent for the state of Wisconsin with Talk. So really excited to be able to develop this relationship with WiLS beyond the natural relationship that we also have existing already as another library consortium that serves Indiana and Michigan, and we serve multiple types and sizes of libraries. So we hope that after today, you'll get a much better sense for what Talk is and how it works. And we look forward to working with you and with WiLS to taking it as widely as possible into Wisconsin for as many for the benefit of as many children before kindergarten that we can. So when I talk about Talk, I like to cover several things here, including what it is and where it came from, what it does and how it works, how it's different from other systems, what it costs and what comes with it, some ideas we have for where to go next with the service, and then we'll do a very brief demo. And I want to show you what it looks like for a parent or caregiver when they sign up. We want to show you what it looks like for a library. And then we also want to show you the toolkits that come with Talk that help you promote the service as well as build partnerships to foster adoption for it. And then with whatever time we have left, we'd be happy to take whatever questions you might have. So beginning with what is Talk and where did it come from? Talk was originally developed at the Ypsilanti District Library, which I will abbreviate here going forward as YDL. So YDL originally developed Talk in conjunction with Great Start, Ypsilanti, and other partners in the Washtenaw County area. And the goal has been to encourage parents and caregivers of children prior to kindergarten age to interact with those children to promote early learning on a variety of dimensions. Mary actually has a flyer. Mary, if you don't mind posting that in the chat. We have if you were at PLA and you saw our flyer there, there's a nice pie chart on the front side of that flyer that shows you all of the different areas of early learning that Talk can help promote. And it's also not limited to early literacy. There are lots of developmental areas that Talk can help promote. And so when YDL originally developed it with these community partners that they worked with, that was really the intention, to help promote interactions between children and their parents and caregivers around early learning. Also, YDL's focus initially was to focus on families that were underserved by the library and really to try to bring greater attention to early learning to those people who were not currently being served by a library for one reason or another. So Talk is a system that libraries can use to send text messages to caregivers and parents of children ages birth to 5. Again, it prompts caregivers to interact with the children to promote early learning. And you can see some of the chronology here. So YDL originally began development for Talk in 2017. They used one platform, which was not really as scalable as they might have liked. And so they started talking with us around 2020 about whether MCLS could help them take Talk from just Washtenaw County to the entire state of Michigan, and then perhaps the entire MCLS service area, and then nationally. And along the way, they also the short answer was yes, we can help you do that. And so along the way, they also applied for an IMLS grant to really further that process along, and they were fortunate enough to receive that grant. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a little bit. And I want to emphasize, you'll hear me say this several times in our time together here, but I want to emphasize that YDL developed Talk from the beginning based on research that they did in terms of early learning with those community partners, as well as ALSC and PLA's Every Child Ready to Read practices of talk, sing, read, write, and play. And by the way, most public libraries already have activities like story times and things that are very centered in Every Child Ready to Read. So Talk is intentionally designed as an Every Child Ready to Read based program that really dovetails nicely with other programs that public libraries do to foster adoption of Every Child Ready to Read practices. So what does Talk do and how does it do it? Basically, this is the simple nutshell of how Talk works, and I'll say a little bit more about what happens in the background in a little bit. But basically, a library subscribes to Talk, and a library can do that individually or as a group. And so in the context of today's discussion, I would encourage you to contact WiLS if you're interested in subscribing, because we have group discounts available for Talk. And so again, we're working directly with WiLS to support libraries in Wisconsin so that we can leverage that discount for as many libraries as possible and establish one or more groups depending on how you prefer to go about it. So once the library or a group subscribes, you start promoting the service. One of the things that you'll see when we look at the promotional toolkit is that there are some context sensitive promotional tools that libraries can place in locations around your community in partnership with other organizations in your communities, whether they be daycares or doctor's offices or churches or other organizations where children and their parents or caregivers tend to go. There are specific and less specific promotional materials that are available for very context sensitive moments. For example, anywhere in your community where there is a diaper changing station in a restroom, you might consider putting a Talk poster, and that Talk poster will prompt a parent or caregiver to do an activity with their child that promotes early learning while they're changing that child's diaper. I think that's a genius way to really promote the service. If that strategy resonates with a parent, they will see immediately on that piece of promotional material a short code that they can text to sign up to get more of that kind of information immediately in the moment. And that's, I think that Talk does a great job of kind of promoting itself, because parents can see specific things that they can use it for in those moments when they're with their child and interacting very closely. So once a patron finds Talk, they simply sign up for it. They can do that one of two ways, either by simply texting that short code that I mentioned, or they can go to the Talk website, and we'll show an example of what that looks like in a while. Then the patron starts to receive messages to use with their child. The messages are age appropriate, and they're based on the birth date for a child that the parent or caregiver enters into Talk on sign up. So if a parent or caregiver signs up a 1-year-old, they start to get messages that are age appropriate for a 1-year-old, and so on. And the library, of course, can use the toolkits and see usage and remaining text counts via the library portal that we've created. So in the case of a group, such as a WiLS group, we have kind of an entity level view. So WiLS would be able to access kind of aggregate data and then be able to look into the data to give libraries specific data points about their own adoption and their own remaining text count that is available. So if you have questions about how that would work at the group level, we're happy to talk with Jeff and other folks at WiLS to make sure that you have the answers that you need for how that will work. So another thing, before I move on to my next slide here, another thing that I'll say is one of the things I most appreciate about Talk is it is possible for an individual library to use Talk and subscribe to it and promote it all on their own. It doesn't require working with anyone else outside the library to implement. And it's much better when a library can engage with local community partners to do that implementation, because that really helps to build the relationships, get the word out about Talk, help you promote it, and really drive adoption in a more in a broader way than you might do working by yourself. So how is Talk different from other systems? You may have heard of things like Ready4K or Write by Text, and other systems may be available in more languages than Talk. Talk is available in English and Spanish. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. So Talk is available just in 2 languages, and it's really focused on that pre-kindergarten age range. There may be other systems that can cover wider age ranges and maybe talk about other topics related to parenting that are not specifically focused on early learning. Talk was really built by a library for libraries and their patrons and designed for underserved populations. So if a person enters their zip code and they find a subscribing Talk library, they can use it. They don't need to have a library card. It's really easy. All you need is a cell phone and access to a library that is a Talk subscriber, and you can use it. So the barrier to entry is very, very low. So again, it covers birth to up to age 5, and it is based on Every Child Ready to Read, as I say. The marketing and other promotional materials, as well as the partnership toolkit, won a John Cotton Dana Award. So YDL did a really good job working with other partners in marketing to create this trove of materials. There's everything in this set of materials that you will get with Talk, everything from bookmarks all the way up to billboards and everything in between. There are many sizes and formats, and we'll go through some examples of what those look like in a little bit. So what does Talk cost and what comes with it? So basically, if you were to subscribe as an individual library, on the left here, you would see that we have a simple subscription fee price, and then we have a text message price, and I'll say a little bit more about each of these. So for the subscription side, we base it on service population. So basically, if you have a service population of 10,000 people, it's $60. Again, for groups or larger systems in Wisconsin, please do contact WiLS. And we've talked with WiLS about a couple of different ways to construct a group, given the context in Wisconsin. That's the subscription fee part. And that really helps us cover the costs that we have of running Talk, including the short code that Talk uses to actually send the text messages out via the Twilio service. And let me pause here for just a moment before I go on to the text messages piece and explain that when I show the Talk portal shortly, the thing to understand about it is simply a piece of middleware that sits between the library and their patrons and the Twilio backend that actually sends the messages. So what we do is we use the portal to collect information about libraries and about subscribers, and then we ensure that those data are available to the Twilio platform so that it can send the messages. The messages also, of course, are stored at Twilio so that it knows which messages to send to which people based on which children are signed up by which birth dates. So we'll see some examples of what this looks like in a little bit. So then the other component is the text messages piece. Text messages are very inexpensive, but they're not free. And so what we've done is we have come up with an allotment of 1,500 messages, and we sell these allotments for $20 each. So Talk sends 147 texts per child per year. And so if you do some math here, you can see that 1,500 messages serves up to 10 children per year. So that's a really easy way to understand how many text messages you might need. And when I show an example in a moment of what pricing might look like, you'll see how that begins to play out. Messages never expire as long as your talk subscription remains active. So messages are not transferable between libraries, and they never expire as long as that subscription remains. So what this means is you can acquire an allotment of text messages, and if you don't use them all in the first year of your subscription, they will go with you. The remaining messages will go with you into your second subscription year, and so on. So what do libraries get? 635 crafted, curated text messages in English and Spanish. Let me unpack this a little bit. When I say crafted and curated, YDL worked very closely with their community partners to develop the English messages really designed around readability, accessibility, and cultural sensitivity. So the point was, let's craft messages that deliver the Every Child Ready to Read practices in ways that are readable, accessible, and culturally sensitive. As part of the IMLS grant, MCLS connected YDL with faculty and graduate students at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we took that same very deliberate approach based on those three principles to translate talks messages into Spanish. So we didn't simply hand it over to AI. We didn't use Google Translate. We were very intentional about it. And again, that was an important part of the IMLS grant that YDL was able to get. So in addition to the texts themselves, you also get this library portal that I'll show in a little bit with very basic use statistics. You get these toolkits we've talked about. On the website, there are book lists, song lyrics, and some sample activities, and you get some support from MCLS. So here are a couple of examples of what pricing looks like for individual libraries. So we'll start with a larger library here on the left. I'll call it Library A. And you can see for the service population that they have of just a bit over 165,000, what we do is we round up to 170,000, divide that number by 10,000, multiply that number by 60, and you get the subscription price that's listed here. Then what we do is we use census data and trends to estimate that 6% of that total service population is under 6 years old. So that's where that 9,947 number comes from. And then from that number, we assume that this library will probably have 2% of that number as early adopters for talk. So that translates to 199 children. So then going to the text message side, so that explains the subscription price based on service population. And then we use that 2% of early adopters to then calculate the text messages. And so we take that 199 children number, multiplied by 147 text messages each per year, and you get just over 29,000 messages. Divide that by the allotment number that I talked about earlier, and you see that it requires 20 allotments to serve that many children for a year. And if the library subscribes, or if a group of libraries subscribes, as we're discussing with WiLS, before July 10th, IMLS funds will cover the cost of those messages while supplies last. So we have an amount of IMLS funds that are remaining that is in YDL's grant budget. And if you, the sooner you subscribe, and before July 10th, so that we can get the reimbursement process handled, then the IMLS funds that are remaining will cover the cost of the text messages. So as you'll see on a later slide, I have the obligatory really salesy slide here in a few that says, now is a really good time to subscribe to Talk, and this is why, because of these IMLS funds that are available. So another example might be, what does this look like for a smaller library after the grant period is over? So that's what Library B here represents. So you can see with a service population of just over 24,000, we round down to 20,000. And the subscription price then is $120. 6% of that service population, as you see it here, and then 2% is 30 children. So then on the text messages side, 30 children at 147 messages each. You can see that number there. Divide by the allotment, you can see the number of allotments. So post grant, if Library B were to subscribe during the grant period and then needed to renew and maintain their subscription and then needed to buy more text messages, you can see that to serve this many children for a year, they would buy 3 allotments at $20 each. That number plus the subscription price equals $180. So we can look at this as the kind of the first year after the IMLS grant period is over. So I know I just went through a lot of math. And Mary, let me just pause and see. I see we have some things coming in chat. So what questions might folks have so far?
There we go. My screen just flashed black, so that was interesting. Yeah, there is a question here in Q&A about the cost for smaller service populations. Do we prorate for smaller populations under 10,000? And I didn't know how you might want to respond to that with the idea of being able to group libraries together with discounts and things like that. So,
well, really, the best answer is we basically say 0 to 10,000 would be $60 as a subscription price. So that's the way that we've handled it. Now, we are certainly open to thinking differently about it. If WiLS were to come and say, if WiLS presented a scenario that we haven't talked about yet, we can certainly have that conversation with them. But typically, we think of it in terms of 0 to 10,000, 10,001 to 20,000, 20,001 to 30,000, and so on. So that's typically how we think about it. Mary, what other questions might you have in chat?
sure, I'm trying to answer things in chat so people can read them. But for those who maybe haven't looked at chat, how does the system work with parents of multiple children in the 0 to 5 age group, right? Can you sign
we'll
up?
Talk about that.
Yes. Can you sign up for, multiple ages like 4 to a newborn? The answer that I put in chat was that, and you're going to cover this, a single phone number can register up to 2 children. So
exactly.
Parent and caregiver, when they register each child, they would put in the birth date.
Anything else before I go on?
And is the subscription rate a one-time fee?
It is an annual price. So as we have annual expenses to manage Talk, it is an annual subscription like other subscriptions that libraries have. Anything else before I move on?
That's it in chat so far.
Okay, thank you. So let me talk a little bit about where we are going next with Talk. Mary is currently in the process of rebranding the promotional materials as well as the partnerships toolkit. So right now, because they've been IMLS funded to this point, their development, IMLS's logo is there. After the grant period is over on July 31st, we will have an MCLS branded version of those things, and we'll simply have our logo at the bottom of the page or the bottom of the materials. We're also working to move materials from their current location in Google Drive to a different location. And we've gotten some requests to make the materials available via Canva so that libraries can edit them themselves maybe more easily than they might otherwise. So Mary's working on some of those things as well. Some other things for future that we've started talking about. Right now, a public library can send up to 2 messages per month per child about activities at the library or events at the library. So some libraries have asked, well, could we send more than 2? And the answer is we want to be cautious to not overwhelm parents with so many messages per child every week that they want to stop out of the service. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of text messages in this election year, and there's always a way to stop. And of course, people don't want you to stop receiving messages. They want to continue. Ideally, a parent or caregiver would sign a child up at birth and let those messages flow into their phone all through the time until kindergarten, when that child can graduate from Talk. So ideally, you would get a parent or caregiver to sign up for a child, and they would persist in the service all the way out to kindergarten. And so we want to do everything possible to retain children in Talk. And so that's why we don't send more than 2 messages or allow libraries to send more than 2 event messages per month at this time. We also know that we need to engage a user community and group for Talk, knowing that there are more and more libraries subscribing. We have over 90 as of now throughout Indiana and Michigan. We've been talking with other states as well. So we know that they'll start to have questions about, well, might Talk have this feature or that feature? And so we need to have an enhancement request process for that. And we've also gotten some questions about, might there be other languages that Talk might be available in at some point? Some examples might be Arabic or Mandarin, or another one is Vietnamese. We've had questions, for example, in Minnesota, they have quite a Hmong population. So that's a question that we've gotten. And again, if we were to approach those things, we'd have to be very careful about that accessibility, readability, cultural sensitivity that went into Talk's messages in the first place. And also we'd have to navigate character sets. So it can get really complicated really fast. So we just have to be very intentional about it. So here's my obligatory salesy slide. If you subscribe before July 10th, you get free text messages paid for by IMLS grant funds while supplies last, of course. And so there are limits on what we have available. However, text messages are inexpensive enough, and there are enough grant funds left that Wisconsin is in a really good position to do very well in terms of text message allotment. So we could talk more about that with WiLS once we have a better idea of how many libraries are really interested. So just to close this part of the presentation here, I want to just highlight a few data points from a pilot evaluation that YDL did with the High Scope Educational Research Foundation in Washtenaw County, Michigan. And so they did this study last fall, and High Scope surveyed parents and caregivers that use Talk. And so you can see some data points here. 60% of sampled caregivers agreed or strongly agreed that because of Talk activities with their children, they've increased the amount of time they interact with their children. That's one of the main things that YDL was after, is increasing that interaction. 72% of sampled caregivers agreed or strongly agreed that they believe Talk activities have improved the quality of their interactions. That's the second big piece that YDL was after with this. And then 92% of sampled caregivers agreed or strongly agreed that they are more aware of activities to build their children's literacy skills because of Talk. And that comes in two forms. It's the activities themselves, as well as the events at the library. So it's helping the library establish that relationship with the child via their parent and caregiver. So it really, these data indicate to us that Talk is really delivering the things that Ypsilanti District Library was hoping that it would do. So here we just have some examples. It's a great program. It generates more opportunities to be involved as a grandparent. So there again is that example of caregiver. It's not always parents that will use Talk with their child. It might be a caregiver, a grandparent. It might be a daycare provider. It might be a cousin. It might be a sibling. There are many examples. And another thing that I like to say about Talk is so many of the activities in it do not require spending money. So in this second quote here, you can see, using your ideas have helped me understand the importance of doing the things that promote early learning and watching the world around us. You can do Talk activities wherever you are with whatever you have. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the way that Talk was and its activities were designed. And you can see here's a grandparent who also happens to be a retired early elementary educator. And this person thinks that the Talk ideas are great. So I take that as a pretty good endorsement as someone with experience with early learning in children. So here is our contact information. Of course, Jeff and Sarah and the team at WiLS have this already. So I'll leave this slide up on the screen and ask Mary again for what questions we might have before I go into demo mode. So Mary, what do you have? Anything I need to address before we go on? Looks like you're muted.
It's as if I've never been on Zoom before, right? Oh boy. Yes. So Hannah had asked if there are some examples of text messages. And I think we do have a flyer out. Don't we, Scott?
I'll actually show that. Yeah, I'll show that.
Yeah.
Well.
And then another question is about, how registration is based. So if someone wants to subscribe based on a flyer they found at a doctor's office that serves multiple zip codes, but not all libraries in that doctor's service area are subscribed. So how, could someone subscribe still, or is it zip code based?
Okay, so let me go straight to that. I'll go ahead and take this slide down and share my browser window here. And let's look at what it looks like for a parent or caregiver to sign up for Talk. Now, again, there are two ways to go about it. And what I'm going to show is the website version of it. And then you'll see when we look at the promotional materials, that example of all you have to do is text the word talk to 75547. And so that will hopefully that will help clear that question up. But basically, if a parent finds the Talk website through their library or through some of the promotional materials, the first thing to see here is that Talk sends 8 to 10 text messages per month with activities you can do at home or anywhere you happen to be to help prepare children for school success. So that right there, the parent has an idea. Okay, I'm going to get 8 to 10 text messages per month per child. So the first thing that the parent or caregiver will do is select their English or Spanish language preference. So I'll choose English here. They would simply type in their cell number, and then they can enter birth dates for up to 2 children. Here again, the reason why that 2 children limit is here is so that parents don't get inundated with messages. Talk sends 147 messages per year per child. So we've really limited it here. You can see if you multiply 10 times 2, that's 20 messages per month, up, around 20 messages per month that a parent or caregiver will get for all of the children that they have signed up. So what happens if you have more than 2 children under 6 in a home? You might need a second person with a cell phone to sign up additional children. The first person can sign up to 2. The second cell phone number can sign up to 2. Then from there, so you can enter the child's birth date. And once again, when our system collects that birth date, Talk will start to send messages that are age appropriate based on that birth date from that list of 635 messages that it has in English and Spanish. So the next thing then is you enter your zip code. So I can enter a zip code here. I'll choose one that happens to be in Michigan. I'll select it. And if there's a library that is in that zip code that is a Talk subscriber, you'll see it here. So in this case, I chose one of the zip codes for Ypsilanti District Library. So I can simply select that library. And then I can select the message delivery time. So if I want a message to come to me in the morning or in the evening, I have a choice. Then you click the sign up button and you start to receive text messages in short order from Talk saying, thank you for signing up. There will be a little bit more information down here. And there is a kind of terms and condition or terms of service and privacy policy here. It says a little bit more about message and data rates may apply, all of the standard language that you would expect for a texting service. And again, it's based on your child's age and your zip code. You can also always text help to 75547 for help. So in addition to the 635 messages, you divide that number by 5, and it will send that number of messages per year. Talk will also send some administrative messages about if you have a problem and need help, and it will also do those event messages for the library. So this section of the page here includes some examples of how you can use empty food containers and wooden spoons for a sing activity. You can use an old glove and cut off the fingertips and make finger puppets out of them for a play activity. If you have a cell phone that has family photos on it, you can use that for a kind of a read activity. So really, again, the barrier to entry is meant to be as low as possible. And there is some information here that basically says, this is a research-backed program. So, and it's not just the research that went into Every Child Ready to Read, it's also the research that went into developing Talk itself. Also, you'll notice there is a Spanish version of this entry page here. So if a Spanish-speaking parent encounters this page, they can get some information. Not every single page on the Talk website is translated into Spanish. And I'll say that there are English and Spanish marketing and promotion materials in the toolkits. So we'll see a couple of examples of those in just a moment. You can also learn a little bit more about Talk and where it came from. There are some frequently asked questions for parents. So you may get parents with questions about it. And so we have some of the common ones that are collected here. We also have things like the book lists and songs. So for example, maybe you're looking for something for a preschooler. There are books that have been selected by the YDL staff that are appropriate to different topics. You can also see, let me go back to the all ages here. And what I need to do is go back to the book lists because I wanted to point out that there are also some bilingual books. So if you're interested in exposing a child to multiple languages, then of course some of those titles are available here as well. Also, as I
Before
mentioned,
we move
yeah,
on,
go
Scott,
ahead. Yeah, go
I
ahead,
just,
Mary. Sure.
because it's connected to signing up and zip codes.
Hmm.
Um, so the question was, can you limit subscriptions in any way, such as, a service area that borders, Iowa and Illinois? They obviously would want Wisconsin residents to be served first.
Hmm.
So how would that be handled, do you think? Because we
It's
can't really
basically
limit them. It's by zip code.
no, no, it's basically kind of an honor system. So the person reports their zip code, and as long as there's a subscribing library that serves that zip code, that's how talk is based.
Right.
That's how it's set up.
Yes. And then, the other question too, when there are two or more libraries that might be in the same zip code. So when a patron puts in their zip code, that drop down list is going to show you all of the options within that zip
Mhm.
code. And then the patron chooses which
Correct.
library they want to affiliate with.
Correct.
So, and that's not something that, libraries can control. We don't want, that patron, you don't have to have a library card in order to use Talk. And that's part of the point of Talk, is trying to bring in people that normally wouldn't be using the library. And, so these patrons are choosing which library they want to get the extra text from as well.
Mm.
Your marketing text. So
Yes.
another question is about, is it a 5 or 9-digit zip code? And I believe it is just 5, correct?
It is a 5-digit zip code. Yes. Yeah. We don't include the extra 4 digits. So that's a good question. One more thing to say about that is, um, well, actually, sorry, I lost my train of thought. If it comes back to me, I'll come back to it. We were talking about zip codes and choosing libraries. Oh, I remembered it. Um, so one of the benefits to subscribing as a group of libraries is that the text message allotment is allocated to that group. And so what that means is that the group collectively spends those text messages. And so if a if for example, if there's a regional system of libraries and a person signs up with a given zip code and chooses a library, and maybe there's more than one library, if it's a group subscription, then that is accounted for differently than if it were an individual library that signs up. So I just wanted to point that out, because any message that you send from or that might come back to Talk is counted against the text message allotment. So there's a benefit to signing up as a group because we handle the message handling in a group sense for groups. So just moving on here, and just to say a little bit more about the Talk website, you can see there are some songs here. There are some examples in Spanish and quite a few in English. And then what I'll do is go next into what this looks like for libraries. So let me go to the Talk portal here, and you can see I'm logged in as myself, and I'm a super user, so I can see more functions than the average person working at a library can see. So what I want to focus on is just a few of these functions here, and I'll start with manage subscriber accounts. So here again, if we think of this in terms of individual libraries, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I meant to do. Let me go back here. What I meant to do was, menu. What I meant to do was manage library accounts. Sorry, I chose the wrong thing. So what an individual library would see, if you select your library here, and in most cases, if you're an individual library, you would see yourself, of course. You can enter the name of a person, you can specify what level of permissions they have and put in an email and a password, and that way you can set up a Talk admin for your library. Now, if you're a group, or what we call an entity, you can see right now we have a couple of entities here. So these two library cooperatives in the state of Michigan, it's the same process, but the entity can establish an administrator for the entire group. So for example, this might be WiLS, and they have a one or more administrator people for Talk for WiLS. So that would be where they would specify that. So we have these toggle switches here where you can see what it looks like if you're an individual library subscribing or if you're a group like WiLS. So the next thing that I'll show here is reports, just to give you a sense of the basic data that you can see. So in this case, you would be able to select your library from this drop-down list. And as you can see, there are a whole bunch that are signed up. We have over 90 currently. And then you can see by zip code, the number of patrons registered, the number of patrons who have opted out of the service, and then also by zip code, the number of children registered and opted out, and then the number of children graduated. You can also limit this by date range, and you can also limit it by age group and by language. So those are the very basic statistics that Talk has available right now. And again, the reason why the statistics are more basic like this is because our system simply captures data that we then make sure Twilio has. So Twilio's backend can do the hard work of sending all the text messages. So it's really pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, the last thing that I'll show here before I go on to the toolkits briefly and see what other questions there might be in chat is I'll talk about the schedule event text piece. So here is where a library can set up an event text, and I'll choose Ypsilanti District Library here. So if YDL wanted to send a specific event message, they can send it to select recipient age groups or select zip codes if they serve more than one zip code. As you can see here, the event text message prefix is event : as opposed to read : write : talk : etc. for the actual every child ready to read based activities. There is a character counter here because there is a 160 character limit on text that you can send. And because of that, we also include a bit.ly URL shortener here. So if you have a longer URL for program sign up, you can use our URL shortener to make that shorter. And if you don't have a native Spanish speaker on staff, you can use this link to Google Translate to at least make a rough translation into Spanish. It may not be 100% perfect or 100% culturally sensitive, but at least it can get the message across to if you have a larger Spanish-speaking population. Then you can choose your send date and your send time and your time zone. So right now we have people that are using Talk, and eventually I'm hoping to see more time zones appear in this list. As of now, these are the time zones that Talk is currently serving. So what does this actually look like if you want to see your event messages? And once again, I'll choose Ypsilanti District Library. You can see the last message that they sent was on May 9th at noon, and it was to promote their kinder concerts at their Whitaker branch. It has the date and time, and then it has this short link in terms of more information and sign up there. And at YDL, they did not translate that message into Spanish. It's not required. It's a friendly thing to do, but it's not necessarily required. And for that message, they didn't target specific age groups or zip codes. You can see another example here from March 19th, where they did target simply ages 2 through 5. So it is possible to do that. Okay, Mary, are there any questions about the portal before I go on to the toolkits?
Not especially. Well, there's a question: is the graduation set to be a child's 6th birthday or 5th birthday?
It's basically when the child has received all 635 messages. So if I recall correctly, it is based on when you sign up, and so it goes out until Talk sends its last message. It is, I want to say, it's in the year between age 5 and 6.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, I think it would most likely be like the 6th birthday, but it just kind of depends on when you start. But also there was a question about how to extrapolate if parents are reading the messages and be able to, and tracking the progress for kindergarten readiness in any way.
That's not something that is built into Talk today.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a pretty sophisticated question that we would really need to look into in much more depth to be able to answer. What we do with Talk is really deliver messages, and the way the system is built today, we don't necessarily have a lot of data about what parents do or caregivers do after they receive those messages. So that's
Right.
That's the best answer we have for that one today.
Right.
Anything else before I move on to the toolkits?
No, that is it.
Okay. So let's look at, we've talked about these toolkits several times. Let's talk about what they actually look like. So right now they're in this Google Drive. They're available from inside the portal. And so you can see that there are a few examples here, or a few different toolkits here. There's the promotional toolkit, and then there's the building partnerships toolkit. There's also some overview materials, and I'll start with the building partnerships toolkit because there are some good materials here for specific partners like medical professionals, educators, and businesses. There are also things for other community partners like parks and recs departments, faith-based organizations, community mental health. So as an example, you can see that there's a kind of a welcome letter or letter of introduction here that is targeted specifically to a faith-based organization. So all of these materials are customizable by the library. If there are specific messages that you want to put in this letter, you can customize it for your own community and your own sensibilities. A question that we get fairly frequently is, what are some examples of messages? And we actually have a PDF document here that gives many examples, again, both in English and Spanish, and based on each of the 5 Every Child Ready to Read practices. So that is available in the toolkit. So you can see we have messages for talk, read, write, play, sing, and on and on. And there are many of them here. Okay, let me go back to the Talk Toolkit and talk a little bit about, let me go back into the building partnerships piece because I wanted to point out, let's look at the medical professionals piece for a moment. There is also a partnership guide, which libraries may find really handy in terms of how you can partner with a pediatrician's office or hospital. It references things like the American Academy of Pediatrics' interest in promoting reading and early literacy, and also finds touch points where parents and caregivers take children around immunizations and well child checkups. So as we know, those health interventions are really important in a child's early life and development. And so that's one reason why medical professionals make a lot of sense as a partner. So you can see here that there are some example promotional materials listed here. You can see different strategies for working with different kinds of healthcare organizations. There's a partnering worksheet that goes through several things like expected outcomes that you might have for a particular partner. Maybe it's a WIC office. You also can document your goals, your tasks, the tools that are available in Talk to help you deliver those tasks, and maybe have some reflections about how did it go and what might some next steps be. So that's just a quick example of one of the guides that is available here in Talk. I also want to show a couple of examples of promotional materials before I stop talking and see what other questions you might have. So let's look at a couple of examples here. I'll show one in English and one in Spanish. So here in the posters and bookmarks folder and more, there's a lot more than just those things. I'll go into the English piece and we'll look at an example of a Talk poster in English. You can see we have things in multiple file formats. And so I'll choose an 8.5 by 11 example. And here is one of the posters that you might encounter at a changing table in a restroom in your community. So as you're changing your baby's diaper, there is something that you can do with that child in that moment. If that resonates for that parent or caregiver, they can simply text Talk right to the short code and get more messages like this. Notice too that in this poster, there's room for the library to put their logo. And as I said, Mary's in the process of converting these materials to the post-IMLS grant period. Another thing I want to point out here is there are also blank posters available and other blank materials. So if a library wanted to take this and modify it and put in, a specific activity that might be context sensitive for a different context in which a parent and child or caregiver and child might be, that you can do that as well. So let me just show a quick example in Spanish as well. As you can see, I am not very adept sometimes at navigating Google Drive, so please bear with me here. It's not my favorite. I'm used to SharePoint, if I'm being honest. So let me jump into promotional materials, and I want to do posters and bookmarks in Spanish. Let me choose a bookmark example. Again, choosing a PDF. So here is an example of a bookmark for talk. You can see it's all in Spanish, and there's a play activity. And my Spanish is not very good, so I can't translate this for you, but I do know that juega means play in Spanish. So that is an example of what that activity might look like. Okay, let me stop my screen share. We have just a few minutes left for whatever other questions might be coming in. So Mary, I actually have access to the chat window myself as well.
Okay.
So let me take a quick look here.
Somebody, Maria asked if we have any thoughts about turning talk into an app, and I was just
yes,
crafting a response.
Yep. The short answer is yes, we have thought about it, and of course, we'd have to put a lot more thought into what that might look like. But the short answer is yes, we have thought about it. And then looks like, yeah, Mary responded to a question from Hannah and Angela there. So that is what we had to present today. I'm looking also for, there's a question here from Rebecca. For a larger system like Madison, if we were considering using this for a very targeted population, would our subscription fee still be based on our service population? I think the best answer to that question is we would treat a larger library system as a group. So if you're a multi-branch system, we can certainly have a conversation about what that looks like at the group level. I will say too that we have talked with people from the Urban Libraries Council, as well as we have a conversation later today with the Association of Rural and Small Libraries. So we're looking at from the biggest of the big systems down to the smallest and rural libraries. So the short answer, Rebecca, to your question is we are certainly open to what a group subscription might look like. And if Madison Public wanted to consider whether to use talk with a group of branches, for example, as a starting point, we could certainly have a conversation about what that might look like. So let me also bring Jeff back into the conversation and see, Jeff, have I covered all the topics you wanted us to cover today? And what questions might you be aware of that we're not, or what else might you want to say about WiLS? Oh, I think you're muted.
I did the same thing. I'm on Zoom 10 times a day. I don't know what's wrong today. Thank you very much, and really great presentation. Every time I hear you talk about this, I'm even more impressed. I don't have any new questions. I haven't heard other questions that haven't already been addressed here. I will say that we have gamed out a lot of different possible scenarios for the right way to bring libraries in to talk. We have kind of worked up pricing for full systems like South Central Library System, which I know the Madison Public Libraries are part of this kind of like much larger system, but we are open to other configurations up to and including individual libraries. Again, and Scott, please feel free to set me straight if I'm wrong about this, but I think the reason why we're using that language of groups so much is because, you know, we want to make sure that it's that the good value that we're getting on the price from MCLS translates into a value for them too. And so if we can come to them with groups of libraries, then that reduces their overhead and setup and maintenance. And so that's how they can afford to give it to our members so cheaply. So I would say, like, we're open to working with individual libraries or subsets or whole systems to come up with a solution that works for you. We have contemplated possibly a group of individual libraries that may want to subscribe, but their geographical system might not want to do it as a system-wide purchase. Then we could have kind of a WiLS group of all the libraries that are interested but don't have another kind of natural fit group that they would fit into. Any of those kinds of things are doable. Just, yeah, reach out to us. We have, actually, I was going to put into chat the WiLS Cooperative Purchasing quote request form link. For those of you who work with WiLS Cooperative Purchasing frequently, you will know this link. This is the best way to get a quote on anything that WiLS offers through cooperative purchasing, but you can also use this to kind of get your customized quote for talk. But again, if you're contemplating something like just the Madison libraries or whatever, we should talk more interactively rather than just filling out the form. Reach out to us. You can always reach us here. I'm going to put in the email address, coop@wils.org. That is sort of the departmental email for the cooperative purchasing team here. And we would be delighted to hear about any other creative ideas that members have about how to form a group or how to strategically leverage this great deal for your libraries. Scott did mention this earlier, but we do have a pretty substantial discount coming to our members based on putting these groups together for them. So, but we don't, again, just for the very thing I was talking about, the configurations might be different, might be some libraries, might be whole systems. So I don't want to throw a lot of numbers out here in a live session because that might change based on the configuration that you, the members, are contemplating. So please do reach out to us and we'll work with you and we'll find the best way forward. We're really motivated because we think this is a really great program. We believe in it. We think that all the Scotties could benefit from this. So we want to get it in front of as many of our members as possible.
And Jeff, I just would like to pick up.
Sorry.
I'd like to just pick up on that point to say thanks again for having us today. And thanks for everyone who was here. And we're really excited about the possibility of partnering with WiLS to bring this to as many libraries in Wisconsin as possible. And Mary, sorry, I cut you off.
No,
Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jeff, there was a question much earlier in the chat. Someone had to leave. Is the recording of this going to be available to people, the attendees?
Yes, it will. So
Okay.
We are recording right now. Hello from the past. Those of you watching this in the future. We are recording this right now. There's a little bit of a processing time to get it edited, and then we'll put it up onto the WiLS YouTube channel, and we will send links out certainly to everyone who registered, but also really we're going to put the link out to the whole group as well, just in case anybody didn't register and thought after they'd like to see this.
There also is one quick little thing I wanted to mention is in the background, I did put the question out about when the child receives that final message to our staff, just to make sure that we have an accurate answer. Again, I think Mary might be right that it's on the 6th birthday, but we'll confirm that and make sure that we get you a clear answer for that.
Great, we'll include that in the follow-up email that goes out.
Okay.
Great. Anybody else who's here in the session? You've got 1 minute left. Anyone else ask a question or heap any further accolades upon our presenters here? I think we might be all caught up. Well, thanks again to Scott and Mary for being here, showing us this really great program. We're super excited to be partnering with you on it. We can't wait to start bringing this to Wisconsin libraries. And please, everyone watching this, whether live or recorded, reach out to us, let us know what we can do to help you. And thanks again to Scott and Mary.
Thanks for having us. And thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. So long. Have a good day.